Okay, good morning. My name is David Paul Achneepineskum. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Matawa First Nations Management. We're here to make a special announcement. Today we have the Honourable Minister Patty Hajdu, Minister of Health. We also have the Honourable Ross Romano. He's with the Ontario government as well. And we also have our president of the board, Robinson Meshake, who also. So what we'll do is we'll get remarks from each one of you, and just want to welcome everyone as well as the media that's on the line. And so, Minister Hajdu, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, David Paul, and it's a joy to be with you here today. I'm currently on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq and the Maliseet people, and when I did the announcement just prior to this, I, of course, acknowledged their territory, and as the elders in Thunder Bay have taught me, I also acknowledge the territory that I come from. And so I know that many of you are on the area of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people of the Robinson Superior Treaty area and homeland to Fort William First Nation. Many Métis people have contributed to that area as well. And I told the people in Fredericton and this traditional territory that they had the second most beautiful area of Canada, that in fact, I come from the most beautiful part of Canada. But it is a joy to be with you. And, you know, we've had a really hard year in our community and certainly in the communities in Northern Ontario, and that hard time continues. And I do want to start, David Paul, by acknowledging just how difficult this fire season has been for so many people, First Nations people in particular in Northern Ontario, and how sad it has been to watch the challenges that those community members face and the destruction of the forests in that area as a result of the fire. So as much as we've been battling COVID-19, of course, we continue to see the challenges of Northern Ontario, and part of those challenges are infrastructure challenges. And we know that many of the infrastructure projects that will be announced today is funding in partnership with the province of Ontario and Minister Romano, who is here and going to say a few words in a moment. That is about building up community and making communities safer, making communities healthier, and making communities places where people have what they need to want to stay, to raise their families, and to have successive generations of people staying in Northern Ontario and in communities that are often not necessarily seen by the rest of the province. And so the funding today that we're announcing is over $30.2 million for 32 community infrastructure projects across Northern Ontario. And these are really important projects, like the Matawa Education and Care Centre gymnasium upgrade right here in Thunder Bay. This, for example, will build a new gymnasium at the facility, and it's a place for young people to stay, well, maybe not just young people, anyone who wants to stay fit and healthy will be able to use the gymnasium, connect with community, and really it's part of Matawa Education and Care Centre's holistic approach to well-being. The funding will also support 26 COVID-19 resilient stream education projects for a number of Indigenous partners. This includes renovations and retrofits to the Pelican Falls First Nations High School, Dennis Franklin Camardi High School, and again, with the intention of keeping these assets healthy, keeping the buildings themselves up to date, things like plumbing and electrical system updates, repairs to the roof, interior repairs to drywall and classrooms and lighting. I've had an opportunity to tour Dennis Franklin Camardi in my own region, and it's an amazing school with so much to offer students. And so preserving that school's infrastructure is really important for the generations of learners that will come through it. I also want to acknowledge that this is a very, very sad time for so many Indigenous people and Canadians all across the country as we mourn the unmarked graves that are found at the site of former residential schools. And in fact, Pelican Falls First Nations High School is a former residential school. And I understand that the NNEC, the Northern Anishinaabe Education Council, is in the early stages of determining how to proceed with a potential burial search site. These sites have these searches are obviously extremely difficult, but extremely important for families as they seek to answer questions about their loved ones that for so many years they haven't had answers about. And so growing up in Northern Ontario, and certainly someone who's worked in and amongst Indigenous communities for my whole life, want you to profoundly know how sad and how tragic this story of the foundation of our country is to me personally. And I want you to know my commitment is there to help in any way possible to ensure that families get the answers that they deserve, and that children that have long passed are recognized and are given the appropriate recognition and burial that they deserve. So the projects today is part of a commitment of the Government of Canada to making sure that we do have equity, in our communities, in particular to institutions that are providing people modern, reliable, and safer facilities where they can learn and connect, and where they can have better access to the social and recreational programs that help facilitate that learning and connection that really is a healing part of all of our journeys. So I'll just stop there. I'll turn to Minister Romano and I'll say to Matawa and David Paul, thank you for your advocacy over the years. You have been a very strong mentor to me. I don't know if it's appropriate, David Paul, to say that our journey together began a long time ago, and everything I know about advocacy and equity has been built on the incredible friendship and relationship I've had with David Paul over many, many years. And too many details to go into, but he can count on me to be an advocate and a voice for the voiceless at every single table I'm at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. It's really enjoyable to have you here, and I just want to say it was good to hire you. It was a good choice to hire you at the our Thunder Bay Shelter House. All right. Now I want to introduce our Ontario Minister, the Honourable Ross Romano. He's the Minister of Government Consumer Services, and is also a member of Provincial Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie. The Honourable Ross Romano. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David, Paul, for the introduction. Minoshinakwe, everyone. Good morning. Ross Romano, Indigenous, Bawating, and Dojaba. My name is Ross Romano, and I am from Sault Ste. Marie. It's a pleasure to be able to join you all again. Very excited to be able to make this announcement virtually, and hopefully I can return to Thunder Bay in the near future for some other good news. I want to also acknowledge the lands that I am on right now. I am on the lands of the Huron-Robinson Treaty. I am lands of the Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, as well as our urban Indigenous friends and the Métis people. These are the lands of the Anishinaabe people, and specifically the Ojibwe. And I always think it's important to make sure we make a really special note that I'm really pleased and honored to be able to be on these lands and to share these lands, and just appreciate the privilege for those who have cared for these lands for all of these thousands of years before we were able to be here. Obviously, want to say a huge thank you to Minister Hajdu and Robinson Meshake Board of Directors President for the Matawa First Nations for being here today. So I offer Chimigwech, a huge thanks to you. And thank you everyone who has joined us today for this extremely important announcement. I'm here today on behalf of the Honourable Kinga Surma, who's Ontario's Minister of Infrastructure, and she sends her warmest regards to you all today. Unfortunately, she could not be here. Today is a very important day for numerous First Nation, Indigenous organizations, and other communities throughout all of Northern Ontario. This includes Kiashki Jaging Anishinaabe, Anishinaabeg, Matawa First Nations, and other Anishinaabe-Aski Nation communities, the Northern Anishinaabe Education Council, the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres, and as well as Sioux Lookout. We continue to strengthen our relationships with Indigenous communities to support healing, to make reconciliation real by advancing initiatives that will make meaningful difference in the lives of Indigenous people and communities. Today, I am very pleased to announce that Ontario has announced more than $7.5 million through 35 infrastructure projects across all of Northern Ontario. Most of these projects that are being announced today are being supported through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, which is also known as ICIP. Through ICIP, we are improving communities across the province with better transit, upgraded school buildings, community centers, and water treatment centers. And this program is dedicated funding specifically for northern and rural communities so that we can address their very specific and unique needs. The ISIP program is helping to make communities safer by also addressing some of the challenges that have been brought on as a result of COVID-19. Today's investment includes supporting major upgrades and repairs to the Dennis Franklin Cromarty First Nation High School, including roof and plumbing repairs, as well as upgrades to heating and ventilation systems and improved accessibility. These upgrades are going to make the school healthier, safer, and they're going to support students as they return to full in-person learning. Today's investment will also help the Matawa Education and Care Center build a new gymnasium. Once completed, this project will increase opportunities for students to learn, to socialize, to improve their lives through physical fitness. In Sioux Lookout, funding will support renovations and retrofits to the Pelican Falls First Nation High School. Once completed, this project will offer students and staff a facility that's wraparound services for students. It's going to leave remote communities that have access to with greater access to school. Another project that we are announcing here today is the Kanachihi Treatment Center in Sioux Lookout. This includes renovations to provide a healing space that supports traditional practices. This work will allow Kanachihi Treatment Center to provide a long-term residential program and a healing space for our Indigenous and Northern Ontario communities. We are also providing some new portable classrooms in a number of Indigenous communities throughout the province of Ontario, and additionally, a clean water and wastewater fund project at Kiashki Zaging Anishinaabe will upgrade the community's sewage lagoon, which will improve the environment as well as water safety for members of these communities. Our government in Ontario continues to take steps to ensure that we are working with our Indigenous partners on a community-led approach to advance meaningful reconciliation. I believe that many of today's projects that we have announced, these infrastructure projects, will do these things by creating learning environments and communities that are both safer and healthier. I want to again sincerely offer my thank yous, my great thank yous, Chimigwech, to all of our First Nation Indigenous organizations for taking part today, and for the participation of our municipal and our federal partners as well. I wish you the very best. Thank you, everyone. Chimigwech to you all. And Minwa goes in. Good luck on the journey. All the best. Thank you.
Chimigwech, Minister Romano, and it's always good to see you. Now I will invite our president of the Matawa First Nations Management Board, Robinson Meshake. Robinson's from Maryland First Nation, and also, Matawa is located on the traditional territories of the Robinson Superior and Fort William First Nation. Robinson.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, David Paul, our esteemed CEO, for the invocation. Thank you to Ministers Hajdu and Romano for the remarks on behalf of their colleagues, Minister Catherine McKenna in the Federal Infrastructure Ministry and Minister Kinga Surma of the Provincial Infrastructure Ministry. Welcome, bonjour, ani, to our followers on our Matawa Facebook page. As president of the Matawa First Nation Management Board of Directors, I am very pleased to be here to be part of the welcoming protocols of this funding on behalf of the Matawa First Nations and the Matawa First Nation Education Authority. As part of today's announcement, 9 Matawa First Nations and the Matawa Education Care Center will receive a total of $5.6 million in funding. Within this, the Matawa Education Gymnasium upgrade will receive a little over $3 million. To the other 25 recipients in Northern Ontario who are part of today's announcements, we congratulate you and we stand with all of you in improvements you are making with your current programs and infrastructure. While our history as a tribal council goes back to over 30 years, over the past 11 years, we have been making a lot of strides in the areas of education. As part of the work on decolonializing education, we have taken the time to understand what works best for our Indigenous students as an alternative to the regular education model. Through the input of students, communities, parents, education authorities, and Matawa leadership, we believe we have found a model and a plan that works best. Within an 11-hour school day, we have developed a multi-phased learning environment model capable of adapting to the needs of our individual students, which incorporates mental health services, recreation, trades programming, land-based learning, distance and cooperative education, cultural and spiritual programming. The Matawa Education's Care Center's enrollment this past year was approximately 150 students. So we anticipate roughly about 200 will be enrolled, with about roughly 100 of them will be living in the accommodations that are part of the renovations of the building. In our Matawa communities, there are 10 schools, some which have only elementary, some have high school, or others combined. And these conditions of our schools vary in part due to their ages. Some of our schools were built decades ago. As I had mentioned earlier, the Matawa Education Care Center's gymnasium upgrade project is being highlighted as one of the projects bundled in this announcement. From our perspective, support for this upgrade to assist us in two important ways. First, to address our ability to meet the Ontario Ministry of Education's COVID-19 guidelines with respect to physical distancing. And secondly, it'll ensure that our students have the access to a dedicated space for health and physical education programming. This gymnasium upgrade will be a critical piece to our holistic model for the student care and well-being. It'll allow us to establish educational cohorts based on the Matawa community, as we need to have these space to hold programming in events within these cohorts as long as this pandemic continues. With an upgraded gymnasium, our students will no longer need to use other organizations' facilities, which reduces their potential for contacts in these places. So in conclusion, on behalf of the Matawa First Nations, the Matawa First Nation Management Board of Directors, and the Matawa First Nations Education Authority, we welcome these federal and provincial investments, and we look forward to working with you, with all the ministries involved as we move forward. Ichimigwech. Chimigwech, thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, Robinson, I think you got all the languages in there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn it over to Crystal. She's going to moderate the question and answer period from the media we have on the line. But also, if we run out of time, Carol Odette will be available to point you to the right direction from our Executive Director, Sharon Nate, that she has more specific answers to if you have any more questions. So, Crystal, it's yours.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Deputer. I am a constituency assistant for Minister Hajdu. We'll now take some time for media and questions. We'll take the questions about today's announcement. And just a reminder that it is one question and one follow-up. Please state your name and your outlet. If you'd like to raise your hand, we'll have you unmuted. Thank you.
Hi, Crystal. This is Carol from Matawa Communications. We have Mia Robson for the first question. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. So my first question is, I think, for Robinson. I'm just wondering if you can explain a little bit about how some of these improvements and these investments in schools will actually make it safer for kids in the fall. Just sort of maybe some more specific explanation of what that will do to make it safer for kids to attend school this fall.
You do unmute there, Robinson.
Yes, hi. Can you please repeat your question, please? I'm just trying to get all my speaking notes ready.
Yeah, sure. I'm just, I guess from these investments, I mean, I guess maybe the first part of it is when they will be completed, but what will this do to help make it safer for kids to go to school this fall?
Okay. So one of the questions is that in response to the emergency education response plan that was released by the province, we want to ensure that we're meeting all the needs in terms of our safety, physical distancing, having the proper PPE, adequate space needed for these students to learn.
Okay. And then Minister Hajdu, given all of the just discussion and concern raised in the last couple of weeks about breakthrough cases amongst vaccinated people, just wondering what you can say to Canadians about why it's still important to get vaccinated and what the risk is to people who are vaccinated of spreading COVID.
Thanks very much, Mia, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the life-saving technology of vaccination. Listen, we are so grateful to the scientists around the world that worked so hard to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. And here in Canada, as you know, we are leading the G7 and the G20 in first and second doses administered. But we do still have folks that are unvaccinated and that have not yet been vaccinated. And of course, we know that with cases still in our communities, still in Canada, indeed around the world, that the best and safest way to protect yourself and to protect your family, and of course the many small businesses who are seeing the recovery of their economies, is to get ourselves vaccinated. And so we've been working, as you know, in partnership with provinces like Ontario, all the provinces across the country, to make sure that we are doing our absolute level best to get people information that they need in ways that they need it, so that we can help folks that haven't had access to vaccination or are still questioning whether it's right for them to get information in culturally and language appropriate ways. But it is very important for people to understand that even as we see cases rise around the North America and the United States, that in fact people who have been vaccinated are extremely I would say very protected from COVID-19, from contracting COVID-19, and extremely rare that a person who's been vaccinated will die of COVID-19. So this is a way to protect ourselves, to protect our families, and to protect the school year and the progress that many small businesses in Ontario are seeing as they reopen our economy.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, Crystal, we have a question from Ian Kaufman. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to answer our questions. So a question I had for Minister Hajdu is just, this obviously, I'm sure this funding is welcome. We've seen previous reports of funding for First Nations students in general being significantly lower than per student funding provincially. In 2016, Don Drummond estimated there was a 30% gap. And I'm just wondering if you can speak at all to, ongoing efforts to close that gap with permanent funding, to set some context for this announcement. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. And listen, equity in education is something that I've certainly advocated for and been able to improve since the time that I've been an elected federal representative. As a former Minister of Employment, for example, was very happy to work on equity and Indigenous adult skills training. And I want to thank David Paul, because I know that Matawa knows a lot about the importance of making sure that people have access to that skills training and education, no matter what age they are. We've also been working, as you know, on health and education accords with Indigenous communities across the country to make sure that Indigenous people also can lead the way in terms of what their education systems look like. There will always be opportunities to do more, and I am confident that with partners like Matawa, we'll be well positioned to be able to continue the progress of reconciliation, including equity. And finally, I'll just say this, Ian. I actually think that equity is the most important job of a politician. That whether we're talking about equity in education for Indigenous people, equity for people that are living in poverty or in vulnerable situations, for me, that's why I'm a federal politician, because I have an opportunity to pursue equity at every single table that I'm at and with every role that I have. And so we'll continue that work with our partners to make sure that children, no matter where they're living in this country, have access to quality education that's culturally appropriate.
All right. Is there any further questions?
It doesn't appear that there are any more questions.
All
I
right.
know Minister Romano would have to be leaving very soon. So just one last time, any other questions? Okay, I will conclude this media event. I want to thank everyone for joining us. The Honorable Patty Hajdu, Honorable Ross Romano, and our President of the Board, Robinson Meshake. Kichimigach, itinene meswe, ibijay kama agishle. Yeah, binagwaban. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again. I'm pretty sure. Miigach.
Miigwech. Pamapi.